Bessie Hensley died in the fall of 1989, and there wasn't a recipe box in that house. Not a note, not a card, not a line of it written down anywhere. Better than 60 years she doctored this whole end of Rockhouse Creek up in Letcher County, and when they carried her out, there wasn't a scrap of paper that told you how she done any of it. I looked. I was 31, and I thought there'd be something, a ledger, a Bible with notes in the margin, anything. There was her Bible, and it had names and dates in it, births and deaths, but not one remedy. It was all in her head and her hands, and it went in the ground with her. I've spent the better part of 40 years trying to put back what I could. Some of it I got, some of it I've had to go read on since, because a boy standing at the stove doesn't ask why, he just watches. And the one thing I could never get back, the thing this whole list circles around, is the measure. She never measured a thing in her life. She knew. That's the part nobody wrote down, and it's the part I want you to hold on to before we're through. I'm Burl Hensley. I'm 68. I still live on the home place, and I'm going to give you 25 of them. Here's the twist. Number 19 is the reason you've got aspirin in your cabinet, and I can show you the exact bark it come out of and the year a preacher in England wrote it up. Number 11, the spring tonic half these hollers drank every March, the government pulled clean off the shelf in 1960, and I'll tell you why they were right to. And number 1 isn't a plant at all. It's the thing Vessie had that I can't hand you, no matter how long this runs. These aren't cute. There was a stretch of years on this creek where the nearest doctor was most of a day off and the money for him didn't exist, and what stood between a child and the graveyard was whatever the woman of the house knew. There's not many left who hold it. Let's count them down. Number 25, the honey. When one of us tore a leg open on barbed wire, Vessie packed raw honey in it and wrapped it before she reached for anything in a bottle. I read on it after. There's an enzyme in raw honey, glucose oxidase, and when it hits the wet of a wound, it makes a little hydrogen peroxide, slow and steady, enough to hold the germs down without burning the flesh the way the drugstore peroxide does. And it's so thick and so sweet, the bacteria can't keep their water, so they die of thirst. The hospitals sell a Manuka honey dressing now for sores that won't close. One thing, and it matters. Never put raw honey in the mouth of a baby under a year. There's a spore it can carry that a baby's gut can't handle, and it kills them. On a grown person's skin, fine. In a baby, never. Number 24. Flannel leaf. Some call it mullein. That tall weed with the soft gray leaves grows on every bank and gob pile around here. Ruth's mother used the leaf for a cough, boiled into a tea, and the flowers steeped in warm oil and dripped in a sore ear. That soft on the leaf isn't for show. It's a slick mucilage that coats a raw throat and helps loosen what's sitting on your chest. Nothing dramatic, it works gentle. Strain it, though. Those same soft hairs will scratch your throat worse than the cough did. Strain it twice. Number 23, Whiteman's foot. You'd know it as plantain, and not the banana kind, the flat little weed with the ribbed leaves growing in your yard path this minute. Get stung by a bee or a hornet, you chew a leaf and pack it on, and the fire goes out of it. There's real chemistry there. The leaf carries aucubin and allantoin, one that calms the swelling and one that pushes the skin to knit, and a tannin that pulls the tissue tight and draws a stinger up and out. Fresh is the whole game. A dried leaf out of a jar does about nothing for a sting. It has to be green, and it has to be crushed. Number 22, blackberry root for the flux. That's the old word for the runs, the kind that empties a person out and scares you when it's a little one. You dig the root, not the berry. Boil it down dark and bitter, and you sip it. It's the tannin doing the work, the same pucker that hits your mouth on a green persimmon. It tightens the gut wall and slows everything down. Now hear me. A hard case in a baby or an old person is about the water they're losing, not the root. The tea buys you time. If it don't turn quick, that's a doctor, not a mason jar. Number 21, slick elm or slippery elm. You cut through the outer bark to the inner, and it's just what the name says, slick, near about slimy when it's wet. Vesey kept strips of it dried, chewed for a sore throat, or ground and stirred in warm water for a stomach that couldn't hold food. It goes down like a coat of grease on a rusty hinge. It's a mucilage, a plant slime that lays down over everything raw and lets it rest. Good news for you is you don't have to skin a tree. The drugstore sells slippery elm lozenges for $2 or $3, and it's the same bark. Get the real inner bark, though. The candy that just says elm flavor is doing nothing. Number 20, yellow root. You find it on a shady creek bank, and when you break the root, it's yellow clear through, bright as a crayon. Men on this creek chewed a little piece for a canker sore or a raw throat and swished the tea for sore gums. That yellow is a compound called berberine, and it's a real antimicrobial, been studied hard. Bitter enough to make a mule flinch. 2 cautions. It's been dug near to gone in a lot of places, so take little and take rarely. And a strong tea of it isn't for a pregnant woman or a newborn. Berberine's not gentle just because it grew wild. Here's where these stop being handy and start being how people stayed alive. Number 19, willow bark, for pain and for fever. You strip the inner bark off a willow down by the water, chew it or boil it, and a bad tooth or a hot forehead eases off. This is the big one, so mark it. There's a thing in willow bark called salicin. In 1763, a preacher in England named Edward Stone dried that bark, ground it, gave it to about 50 people burning up with fever, and wrote the whole thing up for the Royal Society. That bark is the grandfather of the aspirin in your cabinet right now. We'll come back to it because there's money in the story. The bark itself is rough on the stomach. Salicin's hard on the gut lining, so a body who can't take aspirin can't take the bark either. Same thing, same warning. Number 18, wild cherry bark. The old cough syrups all leaned on it, and Vesey made hers from the bark of the black cherry at the edge of the field. Shaved thin, simmered low, sweetened with honey, and it quiets a cough that won't let a child sleep. What it's doing is settling the tickle that keeps the cough firing. But that same bark carries a cyanide-bearing compound, and that is not a figure of speech. Made too strong or boiled too hard, and you can turn the medicine into a poison. Low and slow and weak. A wild cherry syrup is one to know the measure on or leave alone. Number 17, bone set. Feverwort, some called it. When the flu of 1918 come through these mountains and killed people in their prime, bone set tea is what a lot of families had to fight it with. The name comes from breakbone fever, the ache that feels like your bones are splitting, and the tea brings a hard sweat that breaks a fever. Bitter beyond telling. Here's the catch built right in. Make it too strong and it don't just sweat you, it turns your stomach inside out and empties you both ends. The old women knew the line between a sweat and a purge. That line is the whole skill. Number 16, nosebleed plant. Yarrow, with the flat white flower head and the feathery leaf. Old soldiers packed it in a wound to stop the bleeding, and that's no tale. Yarrow carries an alkaloid called achilleine that helps the blood clot, and a tannin that draws the vessels tight. so a crushed leaf pressed on a cut slows the flow. Ollie kept it in mind out in the field, a long way from the house. It's a first response, not a cure. A deep cut or a spurting one is pressure and a doctor. Yarrow's for the everyday gash while you get where you're going. Number 15, the mustard plaster. Ground mustard worked into a paste, spread on a cloth, laid on the chest for a deep cold. Ruth's people swore by it, and it does warm and it does loosen. When you wet ground mustard, it makes a compound called allyl isothiocyanate, the same bite that's in a hot mustard, and on the skin it pulls blood to the surface and feels like heat sinking in. Now this one is bit people. That same compound will burn you, a real blister, if you leave it on too long or lay it straight on bare skin. You put a cloth between it and the skin, and you take it off in 15 or 20 minutes. Leave it on all night, and you'll trade a cough for a wound. Number 14, the onion. Roasted soft and held to an aching ear, or sliced and boiled with sugar into a syrup for a cough. Half the creek did it, and I'll be straight with you on this one. There's a little something to it, some sulfur compounds that thin the mucus, but the hard proof isn't there, and I'll not sit here and tell you an onion cures an earache. What it mostly gives is warmth and moisture and a mother's attention, and sometimes that is the medicine. But a bad earache with a fever is an infection, and an onion won't touch it. That's a doctor. Honest is better than impressive. Number 13, rabbit tobacco. Sweet Everlasting is the book name, that gray weed that smells like maple syrup when you crush it dry. Folks with the asthma smoked it, or drank it as a tea for a cold settled in the chest. My uncle rolled it when his lungs were tight. Did it open him up, or did he just believe it did? I can't fully separate the two, and I won't pretend to. A tea of it is the safer road than the smoke, for whatever it's worth. And if it's a child fighting for breath, that is not a weed to lean on. That's a run to town. From here down, every one of these is still worth money to somebody. Number 12, catnip tea, not for the cat. The granny women, the ones who caught babies all up and down these creeks before there was a hospital in reach, gave a weak catnip tea to a colicky baby or one running a low fever to settle it and bring on a light sweat. There's something in it with a mild calming to it. But listen close, because this is where the measure lives. A tea for a grown man and a tea for an infant are not the same tea, and the difference isn't written on any box. It's judgment, built over years of catching babies. Get that measure wrong on something that small and gentle turns dangerous. I'm not going to give you a dose. I'm telling you it exists, and that it took a lifetime to learn. Number 11, sassafras tea, the spring tonic. Come March, you dug the root, boiled it red, and drank it to thin your blood, they said, after a winter of heavy eating. Every house did it. And this is one I have to be square with you about. Thinning the blood was never real. That's not a thing the tea does. But there's a harder truth under it. The root is loaded with an oil called safrole, and the government tested it and found it caused liver cancer in animals, and the FDA pulled safrole and sassafras off the shelf as a food back in 1960. So the tonic your great-grandmother trusted, the real story is it was quietly working against her. Know this one as history, not as a thing you brew. Number 10, poke salad. The spring green everybody's grandmother cooked, and there's one real safety point here, and I'll not skip past it. Poke is poison. The plant carries phytolactotoxin, and it will put you in the emergency room. My mother Ruby cooked it every spring, and none of us ever got sick, because she knew the ritual and never once broke it. You take only the young shoots, and you boil them. Pour off the water, boil them again in fresh water, and some folks a third time, to leach the poison out. The poison centers get calls every year from people who cooked it once like it was spinach. Under the boil, twice at the least, and pour that water off. Skip that, and you're not eating supper. You're eating a trip to town. Number 9, knit bone. Comfrey, the big rough leaf, and the name tells you the job, they laid it on sprains and breaks to knit a body back. This one earns part of its reputation. Comfrey's full of allantoin, the same cell-building compound I named in the plantain, and it truly does drive skin and tissue to grow. The catch is a hard one. Comfrey also carries alkaloids that wreck your liver, and the FDA asked it pulled off the shelves as anything you swallow back in 2001. So it's outside only and never on a deep or open wound, because it'll heal the top over a dirty bottom and seal an abscess in. On unbroken skin over a bruise, the old use holds. In your mouth, never again. Number 8, jewelweed for poison ivy. That orange trumpet flower on the wet ground, and it grows right where the poison ivy grows, and everybody around here mashes it on a rash. I believed in it my whole life. Then I went and read on it, and I have to correct myself, because I'd rather tell you than let it stand. When they tested jewelweed straight against a fake in real studies, it didn't beat the fake. Plain soap and water beat the jewelweed. There's a grain of something. The plant's a little soapy, and soap is what lifts the oil, but the plant's not the magic, the washing is. So wash fast and wash hard with any soap you've got. That's the real medicine, and I had it half wrong for 60 years. Honest is better than impressive. Number 7, turpentine and sugar. A drop of turpentine on a spoon of sugar, given for worms, for a cough, for a chest cold. Ollie's generation used it and worse. And I'm putting this one on the list only to tell you plainly to leave it be. Turpentine is a poison. It's pine solvent, and taken by mouth, it burns the gut and can stop a child's breathing. And the poison centers will tell you the same. Know this one is history, the way we know a good part of what they did was a gamble they didn't understand. They were doing the best they had. We know better now. Don't put it near your mouth. Number 6, garlic. A clove for a cold, garlic in about everything to keep the blood right, and Ruth's mother put a peeled clove wrapped in cloth against an aching ear. This one has real teeth to it. When you crush garlic, it makes allicin, and a big review of the studies found that in people with high blood pressure, garlic brought the top number down about 8 points, close to what a mild pill does. So the old people weren't wrong to lean on it. 2 things. Never poke a raw clove down in an ear canal. It can burn the skin in there. And raw garlic held on the skin too long will blister you the way the mustard will. Respect it like the medicine it is. Now let me take you back to that willow bark, number 19, because I promised you the money. That bark, with the salicin in it, a chemist at the Bayer Company in Germany turned into aspirin in 1897, and they had the name patented by 1899. A tree anybody could strip for free became a pill sold by the ton, and aspirin is one of the most sold drugs the world has ever seen. Here's what I want you to hear, and hear right. I'm not telling you there was a meeting. There wasn't. Nobody sat in a room and agreed to make you forget the willow. It's quieter than that, and it's worse. The whole medicine business just makes more money when you reach for the bottle than when you walk down to the creek, and so nobody reminds you about the creek. That's not a conspiracy. That's water running downhill. The last 5 take a lifetime, and every one is down to a handful of people who can still do it. Number 5, sang. Ginseng, and up here it was never only medicine, it was money in the ground. A tonic root, chewed for stamina, but the reason a man knew every patch on his ridge is that dried wild ginseng runs $500 to better than $1,000 a pound, and most of it ships to China. That's not a story, That is the market right now, which is why it's near dug out and why the law is on it. It's protected under a treaty. Most states only let you dig a short fall season, and the roots have to be 5 years old with the berries dropped. Dig it green, dig it out of season, dig it young, and you've broken the law and killed the patch for good. Take the seed and plant it back, or there won't be a next one. Number 4, ramps. The first wild green up out of the ground in spring, a wild leek that'll flavor your breath for 2 days. After a winter with no fresh food, a mess of ramps was the body catching back up. And there's a plain reason it worked. They're heavy with the vitamin C a person went short on all winter. The whole creek dug them and ate them fried with eggs and potatoes. But they've gotten famous now, and a greedy dig with the bulb pull kills a patch that took years to spread. Cut the leaf and leave the root, and take a few, not the whole hillside. A patch you clear out doesn't come back in your lifetime. Number 3, a spider web on a cut. Ollie did it in the shop, a bad slice on a hand, and he'd pull a wad of web off a corner and press it in, and the bleeding would slow. And it does, a little. The web gives the blood something to grab and clot against. But I'll tell you the truth of it, that web is filthy, and what you've done is press dirt into an open wound, and a lot of men got a bad infection that way that was worse than the cut. It's in the old stories because sometimes it worked, and the times it went septic didn't get told. Press a clean cloth instead. We've got clean cloth now. They didn't always. Number 2, the drawing poultice. A boil, a splinter buried deep, a thorn you couldn't get at. Vesey made a poultice of bread and warm milk, or a fat meat, and bound it on overnight to draw the thing to a head. And there's real sense in it. The warm and the wet and the salt pull the fluid toward the surface and bring a boil up where it can open. But the drawing is half the story, and hope is the other half, and a deep one, a red streak running up an arm, that's blood poisoning, and it moves fast. A poultice is for the little angry boil on the surface. A red streak climbing is the emergency room. That night, no waiting. Number 1, and it isn't a plant, it's the measure. Everything I've handed you tonight, the willa and the poke and the catnip and the honey, every one of them turns on the one thing I cannot give you, and that's knowing how much. Knowing when the bone set's a sweat and not a purge. Knowing the poke's bald enough. Knowing a baby's fever by the back of your hand before a thermometer would say a word. Vesey never wrote the measure down because it wasn't a number. It was 40 years of standing over the sick and the hurt until her hands just knew. That's the thing that dies, not the recipe. The recipe's easy. You can find the recipe anywhere. What dies is the judgment, and it dies with the person. And no video, this one right here included, can put it back in your hands. Only the years can. Here's my challenge, and it's a small one. This week, go find one of these growing. The plantain in your own yard path, number 23, or a mullein on a bank somewhere, number 24. Just find it and learn it cold so you'd know it in the dark. You don't have to use it. You have to be able to name it on sight. That's where the measure starts, with knowing the plant. And that part you can begin on Saturday for nothing. There were women on this creek that could walk a spring hillside and name 40 plants and tell you what every one of them was for. There's not one of them left, and I'm about the closest thing to it for a good many miles, and I had to read half of it back out of books. So tell me in the comments, and I mean one specific thing. What's the cure, or the plant, or the trick in your family that come down to you from somebody? Whose was it, and what county did it come out of? I read every one of these, and what you all send back is the whole reason I keep doing it. That's how it was done. Now somebody else knows.